incredible 4-part series coming up. I won't speak much on Section 8, but it has caused a few problems in the industry, not the Section 8 itself, but the actual litigation that maybe comes along with it. So we will come and help you prepare, not only to protect yourself, but to give people affordable home ownership. So with no further ado, I would like to introduce our professors for this class. We have Khalid, Bryan, and Evian Witt de Leon. They will be teaching us. Evian is with the Miami Association of Realtors. She's the chief of legal. And we have Khalid Bryan, which is a Miami YPN advisory board member. So Khalid, Evian, thank you so much for your time. We greatly appreciate it. And thank you so much for teaching us everything we need to know about the first part in Section 8. The floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome again. I'm Evian White de Leon. I'm the association's chief legal counsel, and I have the privilege of being joined today by Khalid Bryan. He is one of our, again, YPN advisory board leaders. He is, in my opinion, a great expert on Section 8 and a great resource on Section 8, and we are thrilled to have him with us here today. A little housekeeping before we get started. Wanted to let you know what's coming in the series, right? Kevin mentioned that this is part 1, which is wonderful. And today we are going to talk about the nuts and bolts of Section 8, understanding how it works, best practices, and in general from the business side. I know a lot of you are going to have questions about the legal side, but stay tuned, that's coming. Part 2, which is next week, same time, same place, we are going to talk about how to find more business with Section 8, or better said, Khalid will talk about how to find more business with Section 8. We're going to talk about offers, how to get them accepted, understanding your role as a tenant agent or a property manager. That's Section 2. Part 3, we are going to have with us Nan McKay, who is the contractor that administers Section 8 for Miami-Dade County. Miami-Dade County is the largest, as you know, housing provider of Section 8 vouchers in the county. There are some other agencies out there, but really Miami-Dade is the biggest one. So we will have the administrators on with us to talk with us from an administrative perspective, best practices, and we're thrilled to be able to ask them questions as well that we get all the time. And last but not least, the 4th week in April, the 4th Wednesday this April, we will be hosting Kenya Robertson. She is the CEO and president of Hope Fair Housing Center. She is an attorney. She and I will be talking with you about the legal perspective of Section 8, how to avoid getting sued, best practices, again, from a legal perspective. So that's the roadmap for what you're looking at to give you an idea of the types of questions we'll be fielding today. Now, disclaimers, little housekeeping on disclaimers. This is not legal advice. This is not representation. This webinar is for educational purposes only. And as far as the run of show goes, please make sure you stay on mute. We are recording so that we are able to share this webinar with our 60,000 members after today. So please stay on mute. If you have questions, do not ask them live. Please put them in the chat. Kevin and I will be monitoring the chat. We will be pulling out questions to ask at the end of Khalid and myself. We will have Q&A at the end. We will be sharing the slides. And on that note, Khalid, would you like to take it away? Or actually, I think I'm taking it away first, right, to set the stage. Just kidding.
No problem.
Just kidding. I was too eager to hand it off to you. So before I know. And so before we jump into Khalid's slides, my job today is to set the stage for you and what is Section 8 and what is this relationship between the housing authority, the tenant, and the landlord. How does this all work together? And it is a little complicated. And because of that, we have a little slide that I'm going to use to talk to you about the different players involved in Section 8, because we want you to have the language. We want you to share the same language that we'll be using throughout the rest of the presentation and the rest of these series. So, all right. So Section 8, what is it, right? Section 8 is a program, and there's actually lots of different types of Section 8. And the type of Section 8 we are going to talk about today is the Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program. This is where an individual back in the day, if you were practicing many years ago like me, folks actually had paper vouchers back in the day. That's not so much anymore. But they had a paper voucher, right? And that housing choice voucher, as the name implies, gave those individuals and gives those individuals a choice of where to go. The voucher stays with the family. They are then able to take that voucher and go live in private housing of their choice. It was started by the government many years ago as an attempt to decentralize poverty and really give historically marginalized folks access to housing of their choice, school districts of their choice, all of these things, right? And so the housing, the Section 8 program is set up like this. On my screen, I have this little triangle, and this triangle shows the relationship between Section 8, the housing authority, right? It could be Miami-Dade County, there's a bunch of others, but we'll just call it the housing authority here, the tenant, right? And then the landlord, and how all of these players work together. So between the landlord and the tenant, right? They have a lease, and this makes sense because you all know you work with tenants and landlords all the time. There's a lease in place. That's the legal relationship that governs the landlord and the tenant. Between the housing authority and the landlord, the legal documents that govern between them are all the agreements that the landlord has to sign with Section 8. Lots of different paperwork about the quality of the housing, how they get paid, all that good stuff. Between the housing authority and the tenant has to follow a whole bunch of different rules and regs, right? From state, federal, all the way down to local admin plans, right? The tenant has to abide by all this stuff. There's all these rules the tenant has to follow. Fine. Now, most importantly, how does one get paid, right? So if we're talking about total rent of $1,000, and that's the rent we're going to use, even though I know it's not realistic at all, but my math is not so good looking. That's why I'm your chief legal counsel and not your chief of something else. So we've got, the total rent, let's say it's $1,000, right? The tenant portion, let's say it's $100, right? So the tenant will pay that directly to the landlord. Where's the rest of the money come from? That's called the HAP, the Housing Assistance Payment. And that HAP payment comes directly from Section 8 to the landlord. The landlord gets paid from Section 8, that difference. And if you're wondering, gee, how is that calculated? Well, the HAP payment and the tenant portion, that is calculated really based on the tenant portion. That's what's determined first. And the tenant portion of the rent is determined by the household income for that family, whether it's an individual or a group of folks living together. The household income. The rent is usually 30%. In some cases, it can go up to 40% of the household income, right? So the tenant portion of the rent will be based on the household income, and the HAP fills in the difference. So that is the quick, very quick version of how these legal and money relationships work between the housing authority, the tenant, and the landlord. And now that you all know the lingo that we're talking, now I'm for real going to pass it off to Khalid to get started on part 1 of our series.
Absolutely, let's do it. Okay, before I start, you guys can see this full screen, right?
Yes.
That's all that matters. Okay, cool. So before I get into this, just to touch on, I'm gonna try to explain this to a way that everyone can explain it. But if I ever lose anyone, just feel free to drop in the chat. Can you rephrase that? And I'll go back and I'll re-say whatever I just said. All right, so let's get into it to not waste your time. So the things to note, like Evian said, Section 8 is an additional income source. It's not a type of person, not a type of property. Any property can take Section 8, and it is illegal to discriminate against someone's source of income. So with that being said, it's incorrect to hear someone say, oh, they just built some Section 8 houses across the street. It's incorrect to say, oh, I have this Section 8 tenant. It's just a person who's happened to be using that voucher. As far as the income sources explained, the same way you shouldn't say, no, I will not take Section 8, you wouldn't say, no, I won't take strippers. Can I say strippers? Is that wrong? Gray area? Okay, you can't say, no, I will not take firefighters. I will not take policemen.
That's right. Lawful sources of income, as we say. So
whatever
things that
they
are reported
have
to the IRS.
Yes, if they can prove to you that the money is coming in and it's legit, I don't see why you wouldn't take it. Inspections are required before lease commencement and renewal. So Once you get through that first inspection, you're not out of the water yet. You still have to maintain the property for the next year. They will not renew the lease without another inspection. The reason they're doing this is to make sure, number one, you're taking care of the property so it's safe for the tenants. And number two, making sure the tenant's taking care of the property so they're not ruining your property. And now you have this whole misconception that Section 8 did it. So that's why they're kind of on top of this. Safety is really the main priority when it comes to these inspections. I'll go into the inspection process a little later, so let's keep going. If there is an association, they will not schedule the inspection until you're approved. So we all know some associations, they take a full 30 days to approve your tenant. Well, you have to do that full 30-day process before housing will take your lease and schedule an inspection on the property. So that does mean that Section 8, deals involving Section 8 will take a little bit longer than someone who may not be, just because of those extra steps of the inspection and scheduling it. Credit, background, and income screening is still required. The biggest mistake a lot of landlords and agents make is when they see someone's using a Section 8 voucher, they just assume, oh, guaranteed rent, and they move them on in. The rules and laws of real estate still apply here. The rules of negotiation, the rules of screening, all of that, you're still protecting your client, you're still protecting yourself. Housing is only looking at what their income is and what their expenses are. So they're gonna ask for their bank statements every year and just review. So it's still up to you to make sure the person you're moving in is a solid, stable tenant. I shouldn't say that. A solid tenant that is capable of taking care of your property. So they can have a Section 8 voucher and have a 750 credit score. They can have a Section 8 voucher and have a 400 credit score. So it's up to you to really look at it and make sure that their income checks out with the vouchers, that their background checks out, that their credit checks out. Tenants often
Khalid,
yes.
Yeah, and Khalid, to jump in there, we hosted an attorney who represents mostly landlords and handles evictions from a landlord side a couple years ago now. And one of the things that really stuck with me that he said was, listen, a credit score is not necessarily indicative of somebody's ability to pay the rent, because if somebody has a low credit score, that means they're not paying unsecured debt, right? So that could be things like credit cards. And conversely, what that means is they could be prioritizing things like rent, which are not going to be reported to a credit agency unless there's an eviction judgment, all that. So you really want to take a close look at credit scores and really analyze your own internal policies when it comes to credit scores, because that in and of itself is not necessarily indicative of somebody who will or will not pay the rent.
That's a good point. I will say when we check credit, we're more so looking at what's going on in the credit. So you will find that every single item on this report is late, unpaid. It's like, okay, they're just not paying anything. You will sometimes see someone has a low credit score, but everything's paid on time. They're trying their best, but it's like they have a student loan, a $50,000 debt, something like that. Okay, you can kind of weigh out their options and see, okay, the income and everything checks out, and then you can, I guess, make the best decision for you. But don't just look at the score and cut it there. Go dive deeper, do your full research. And before we move on to the next slide, Evian touched on this before. Tenants often pay a portion of rent depending on their income. The way housing figures out who's gonna pay how much and for what property is, like I was saying, they're looking at your bank statements and then they're looking at the market. So they're gonna give you a page that has a list of zip codes and a price per zip code. And then another page that says, okay, so we will pay this much and you will pay that much. Every year, every year, those amounts are gonna change because every year they're expecting a change in the tenant's income. All right, I feel like that was clear enough. Yeah, moving on. So things to know continued. The tenant pays the security deposit, application fees, and their portion of first month's rent. Housing pays all 12 months, so they don't prepay last. So this is pertinent when you're writing your offers, your leases, or moving in. Yes, housing does pay all 12 months of the lease, but the tenant is responsible for having their own security deposit. A major reason a lot of realtors get fed up or frustrated while helping people with Section 8 is because, like I said, they're not doing their screenings. Any client you're working with, you're gonna want to pre-qualify them before taking on the client. So that means making sure they have their security deposit ready. That means making sure they have a credit score or credit report that is approvable. That means making sure they have the proof of income. So the things that you're gonna need for any other property, it's not gonna change because they're using Section 8. You're not gonna treat them any differently. So because they're not paying last month's rent, you're often going to be sending offers with just first and security. If you ever have an owner that is saying, absolutely not, I cannot do it for 2, I need 3, I would suggest writing it as a 2-month security deposit, just so when they move out, they're getting it all back and the owner can't say anything because the same amount of money you wanted to see coming in is coming in. Housing pays via ACH between the 1st and 5th of each month. The first payment can take up to 30 days. This depends on the day that they move in. So if the lease is supposed to start on the 1st and something happens, everything's delayed and they move in on the 15th, there's no way housing can just shoot that ACH over right away because it's all systemized. So you'd have to wait for the next cycle when they're sending out payments where they'll add you in and they will pay you for the previous month that they missed and the month that you're on. So it's important to note that and let your clients, your landlords, your property managers, let them know before accepting this offer, listen, the first month's payment may be a bit delayed because of this, this, and this. If they have a full understanding, they'll be more comfortable. The biggest reasons people are hesitant or skeptical to do this is because they don't have an understanding. And more often than not, the agent they're working with also is just as clueless. So if you're both clueless, you're going to freak out and avoid the whole situation, but you're actually doing a disservice because you're cutting out a huge chunk of potential. Payments can go to either the owner or the management company. So when you fill out the housing packet, they're going to ask, okay, where should we send this money? You're going to fill out a bank direct deposit form. You'll have to submit a blank check and they're going to ask, okay, is this the owner or the property management company? So either of those people are qualified to receive the rent. Commissions can't come from security deposits because, like I said, housing will not let you pay last. So if you're moving in and let's just say the tenant's portion of first month's rent is only like $100, the security deposit would be all that's left. Well, you can't take a commission from that because the security deposit can't be touched. The laws of real estate don't change. So you would have to wait with the owner for this first payment to come in, and then the owner would have to pay out both brokerages if there are two brokerages. Biggest thing here, this is a big thing that's just been going on for the last couple of years. Do not ask agents, do you accept Section 8? And if someone ever asks you, do you accept Section 8? Say yes. I like to say yes, absolutely. Everyone can apply as long as you're qualified. Here are the qualifications. I will give them, this is what you need to be approved for this property. Do you meet these criteria? Leave it at that.
And please submit an application. All applications submitted will be considered. Do not get got on the phone, right? So if I'm calling Khalid, I say, Khalid, ring, ring, pick up the phone. Okay, hello. Hey, Khalid. Hey, Khalid, hey, I have a voucher. Will you take it?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay,
but just send an application.
Okay, but I have really bad criminal history. I, was selling all sorts of stuff. I've been in federal detention center for like 3 years. You gonna accept me?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's not up to me. Just send me your application. I will give you our approval requirements. I'll submit it and I'll just let you know what we can get.
But I really want a yes or a no. I don't want to have to go through the whole application process and pay a fee to apply if you're just going to deny me. So can you just tell me right quick on the phone if you're going to deny me?
I'm sorry, but that decision isn't up to me. I'm not the owner. I'm just the owner's representation.
There you go. Yep,
right.
Khalid passes with an A++. Do not.
And I'm not getting sued.
And folks will get really pushy like that. Give me a yes. Give me a no. I want to know what the answer is.
No, they got a check coming. They're getting paid.
Right.
Okay. So before I move on this note, so it's important to note that a lot of agents tend to have a low success rate with getting offers with Section 8 approved. They also have a low success rate with even getting into properties. So what I found, because I've been on all sides of this, I've been a tenant's agent using it, I've been a listing agent using it, and I've been a property manager receiving it. The biggest thing I've noticed is as a listing agent, a lot of agents will call me and says, hi, I have a tenant using Section 8 and I just wanted to know if I could show your property. Why are you telling me that? Hey, I have a tenant who's using vouchers and, I just wanted to see, would you take their offer? Why are is this your offer? Are you making an offer right now? So take it seriously. Do your tenants a disservice. You're not going to call in advance if you were selling a house and give out everything about you, send an offer. So personally, I don't even bring it up. When I have a client using Section 8 and they want to see some stuff, I look at their report. I already know their credit score. I know their income. I know their background is clean. And I know they have the security deposit because that's very important for me. I'm gonna look at the listing, read the requirements, and see, oh yeah, they qualify for this, they qualify for that. And I'm gonna weed out anything with an association that, number one, has a 30-day approval requirement, because they probably told me I'm in a rush, I don't have time. So why would I show you something with a 30-day approval requirement knowing they won't even start until you're approved?
And to jump in there,
bonus,
Khalid,
yeah,
and to jump in there, Khalid, you know, with the security deposit issue, we all know that that is a quagmire, and that getting, you know, a security deposit back from a former landlord can be a headache sometimes. And I wanted to throw out there that if you are working with individuals who have, or families who have Section 8 vouchers, and they're having problems getting their security deposits back, you should refer them to the new Office of Housing Advocacy in Miami-Dade County. I'm dropping the link in the chat. And if you Google it, it comes right up, Miami-Dade County Office of Housing Advocacy. You want to reach out to them because, or have your customers reach out to them to start the process of filing a complaint to get their security deposit back. They can make referrals to places like Legal Services of Greater Miami. And there are quite a few private attorneys who will file these cases because they get attorney fees if they win. So there's a, yeah. So if you are working with customers who are tenants who haven't gotten their security deposit back, make sure that you are offering them those resources, which are really valuable resources.
I didn't even know that was a thing. That is a good point. And now you see why you can't take a commission from a security deposit, because they would have spent it before the lease even started. So we're, you know, so it's gone. So yes, the biggest thing to note is to increase your success rate instantly. Stop calling in advance and telling people you have Section 8. It's like calling and saying, hey, so I have a police officer here. I just want to know if you would rent to him. Like, it's very rarely gonna go in your favor. So just show the property, you know the qualifications, you know their qualifications. If it works, it works. Submit the offer, and in the offer, I would notate the voucher, and I'll show you how later. Okay. Is this a new page? This is not a new page. This is a new page. All right, so the process. So the first step is the tenant receives a voucher packet that outlines their max budget and a deadline. These vouchers do have expiration dates. So if you're ever working with a tenant with a voucher, it's just like a housing pre-approval. You're gonna wanna check the date. You're gonna verify the amount that they're approved for, because you don't wanna spend all your time shopping with them, doing, showing, sending offers, and then you later find out you were in the wrong price point. That is the gist of that. And the voucher itself, it's a thick packet. It's probably about, I want to give it 15 to 20 pages. And this is another reason a lot of people get discouraged. They get intimidated by how large this is. It's because it has half of the pages for the tenant to fill out and half of the pages for the owner to fill out. And it's one packet. So the tenant has to fill out their portion, and then it has to be delivered to the owner to fill out their portion, and then deliver it back to housing. And if it doesn't work out, you got to give it back to the tenant, or they have to go get another one. So the voucher is a pretty big deal. If it's filled out incorrectly, housing will send it back and make you do it again, and you'll have to wait to reach them again. They're not going to respond instantly every time, because they have a lot of people they're helping, a lot of owners that are reaching out to them, a lot of agents that are they're busy. So it's on you to really know what you're doing and be on top of it, and just make sure that everything is kind of complete. I mean, it's the same if you were applying to an association or doing a purchase. You're going to make sure all your paperwork is on point if you're a legitimate, good, hardworking agent that's not lazy. So after you have the voucher, you find a property and get an offer accepted by the landlord. Like I was saying, in your offers, I like to put tenant, you know where the additional terms are, tenant using Section 8 benefits towards rent payments. I'll just put that just so now the owner knows, because what will happen is you'll call the agent, you'll tell the agent, and the agent shouldn't, but they might say, I don't know, because this and that. Well, you kind of, now you're like, all right, well, let me move on to the next one. So by doing it this way, it's going through the agent. They have to present your offer, and it's going straight to the owner. So now it's up to the owner to say, I kind of like this. This sounds interesting. And then now they have to ask the agent, so how does this work? And the agent's duty is to figure it out. So secure a lease between the landlord and tenant. Do not execute the lease, though, because housing authorities do not want to execute a lease. They don't want people signing up and executing leases before they've even seen it. They might say no. They might say this doesn't work. It might fail inspection. So they want an unexecuted lease just so they can review it. If there is an association, you have to apply for the association before housing will do inspection. So I secure the lease, I send it to the housing authority for their review, and they'll say, yeah, this looks good. Go ahead and apply for the association. The association might say, well, we need an executed lease. We will not do this with an unexecuted lease. in that event, I will do the lease, and I'm not, she'll kick in here. I would put, this lease is contingent on tenant being approved. I mean, this lease is contingent on successful Section 8 inspection. So if it fails inspection or anything goes like that, then it's already verbalized that this lease will not be able to go through. And then I'd still send housing their unexecuted version. So I'd send it to housing before it gets signed, then get it signed, then send it to the association. And once the association approves it, send the approval and the lease and the packet back to housing, where they will review it and they'll say, all right, let's do inspection. So I kind of jumped around here, but yes, tenant and landlord will both fill out their respective pages in the packet and turn it in. The agent should proofread the packet. So it's very important for you to go through every single page and make sure there's no blank spaces. It's not just paperwork, it also asks for things to be submitted. So they're gonna say, we need a copy of the deed. Well, if the owner doesn't have a deed laying around, we know as agents, we can go on IMAP. I think they changed the name of IMAP now, but we can go on the tax roll and pull up the deed. It's right there. Just download it, print it, and submit it. They're gonna ask for a copy of the owner's check. They can get that. The caseworker is going to review the packet and execute the lease. They're going to request changes. They're going to ask questions just so they have a full understanding. And while they're looking at this, just so you know what they're looking at, they want to see if any utilities are included. They want to see if how many bedrooms it is, because the way they come up with how much they're going to pay is, number one, they're looking at how big the house is, how many bedrooms. The more bedrooms, the more they're willing to pay for it. Also, any utilities, the more utilities you include, they will pay more, like a light bill, like a water bill, they'll pay more. The housing authority schedules inspection on the property. This can take a couple of days for them to get out. Maybe I would give it a week or less for them to get out. And a note on inspection. I'm going really fast, guys, so feel free to like drop in the chat, slow down. On the note on inspection, it's important to note that if there's an appliance or something in the property that you know doesn't work, do not list it on the packet, because in the packet it's going to say what all utilities, what all appliances are you giving them. You're going to put a dishwasher, refrigerator, a microwave. I had a situation where I notated that there was a garbage disposal, and they got there and they tested it and it didn't work. So they failed our inspection. So I had to remove the disposal from the items provided. And if you don't mention it, they won't have a reason to test it, and they won't fail you for it because you didn't offer it as something provided to the tenant.
And so Khalid, by the way, Khalid, we're getting a note to take it one notch slower. I'm keeping up with you, but that's because I've been around the housing block a couple of times. So, yeah. And by the way, this and you're doing a fabulous job. And by the way, everyone who's listening, you will be able to see this recording and you will get the slides. So you are going to be able to watch Khalid over and over and over again as many times as you would like, at half speed. And so you will definitely get the slides. You will get all the material. So so yeah, just wanted to throw that out there.
I got you. Okay. All right. So
and also, Khalid, to jump in there with inspections and administrative, bumps that you might have with Section 8, right? If you are having really tough time with Section 8, and I'll tell you, I have. I used to represent tenants against Section 8, right? And so if you are having issues with Section 8, you might want to send your tenants, right? If you're working with a landlord and you got a tenant, you will want to send your tenants to Legal Services of Greater Miami. They regularly represent tenants to untangle gnarly problems, right? And there were a lot of times where, yes, I was representing a tenant, but I was actually really working with the landlord, right, to make sure the landlord got paid, because it was in nobody's best interest if the landlord didn't get paid, right? Right. So if you run into weird administrative problems, whether it's on inspections, whether it's on, leasing up issues, and by the way, tenants have a right, if they lose their job or if they get more income or if things happen, if somebody moves out of the household and their income needs to change, right? The HAP payment might change midstream. And so sometimes when that happens, when you're in the middle of the lease and the HAP payment changes and the tenant portion changes, things get a little funky. If you see any of these administrative issues, these are things that the advocacy team at Miami Realtors want to hear about. We want to know about these things because if they are becoming a widespread issue, we are able to advocate, right? And this is a shameless plug for our PAC, right? Our Political Action Committee, our Miami Realtors PAC. We regularly advocate for changes in the system to make your lives easier, better, and your business more successful. So remember, we want to hear about these things. I'm going to drop our advocacy, and I'm copied on the advocacy email. So make sure that you are sharing these things with us.
I'm learning with you. Okay, cool. So, yes, so like I was saying, if there's something you know that doesn't work in a property, either fix it, replace it, or make it known that this is not included in the property. I've also had a property that had a washer and dryer that did not work because of a plumbing issue in the building, and the owner wasn't willing to drop the thousands of dollars for the plumbing issue. So the solution to that was just make it known that the washer and dryer is not included. If it's not included, then they're not going to expect you to maintain it. Let's see, where are we? Okay, boom. After successful inspection, then housing will say, go ahead and move in. They'll say, go ahead and sign the lease, date it for today, and they'll set up the first direct deposit for the owner and let you know when to expect it. There's a lot of transparency in this. So you'll be able to tell the owner, you'll be able to get your first payment on this day. On this day, you'll be able to send us our commissions, and you'll be able to set up your walkthrough. Once all that's set up, go ahead and conduct your walkthrough, and the tenant will exchange funds for keys. Remember, the first payment may take a little while to come, so the owner is only going to receive the security deposit, which is probably in escrow, and whatever the tenant's portion of first month's rent is, which they would already know because it's been written in the packet. Okay. How do we move? There we go. Things to note in your offers. So like I was saying before, if the owner insists on getting 3 months of rent funds because they probably have to pay a commission or whatever the reason may be, again, housing won't let them pay a full first month and a full last month because they're going to pay via automatic deposits. Also, they don't know if something happens, they may need to terminate this lease for whatever reason. That's speculation. I'm not 100% sure that's what they would really do, but I'm assuming that's part of the reason why they don't want them to do this. So I'd write it as a first month's rent and a 2-month refundable security deposit if your tenant is capable of paying that much. In additional terms, like I was saying, I'd suggest putting tenant using a housing authority voucher towards rent payments paid via monthly ACH deposit. Lease contingent on successful inspection. First month's ACH deposit may take up to 30 days to process. On the contract to lease, on the last page where it says additional terms or notes, that's where I'm putting this, just so the owner is fully aware of what they're getting into. There's no surprises, and you don't have to worry about the agent freaking out before it even gets to the owner. If there is
Khalid, Khalid, one other thing to jump in on that first point, if the owner is insisting on getting 3 months of rent funds, just be mindful that the Section 8 program has an administrative plan, and I'll put it in the chat again. And that admin plan is clear that you can only have 1 month of a security deposit, but make sure you're working with Section 8 to get that approved. Section 8 might be able to just be really clear about what you're doing, right? So that everybody's on the same page, because that could be an accommodation, to get somebody into housing. And as we all know, the housing market is wild. In the rental space right now too. So we want to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to get folks into housing, especially affordable housing. So just make sure you're working with that case manager and caseworker, and that it's all documented.
Yes, and that's exactly why they want to see the unexecuted lease before allowing you to do it, because they want to see, what are you signing yourself up for? What are you getting into? Because they'll see you can't afford that and they'll shut it down. They don't want to set them up for failure. Yeah, that was it. Oh, okay. Another note on that is because sometimes there will be properties, like, let's just say it's a large house. Let's say it's I don't know, let's call it a pool house on a ranch, that property, maybe a $2,500 security deposit isn't enough to protect that property. So that's another reason an owner may want a larger security deposit. A larger security deposit is just another way to kind of put the owner at ease. It's just more security for them should something go wrong. So that's another reason. Boom. Verify the property associations have a minimum of income or credit scores, because some associations, you'll be able to see their approval requirements is likely on the application. And the reason I only worry about the association approval requirements is because if the owner or the agent has unique approval requirements, my job as an agent is to negotiate that. My job as an agent to get my client in this property, because if we want to define what a good agent is, some may say it's the agent that produces a lot of money, but I would look at it as an agent who's able to close the difficult. an agent who is able to take someone who no one else could help and get them in, especially if they're qualified, because there's a lot of qualified people out there not getting help because people are just unaware of how to do it or just afraid to mess up. So verify the associations have minimum income or credit score and align that with your tenants, and add the voucher amount to income when calculating. So if they make, let's say, $5,000 a month and the vouchers portion is an additional $2,000, they now make $7,000 a month, right? So that's how I'd write their application out. Ensure they have the deposit before starting. That's the biggest thing for me, because you would spend weeks or months finding a property, finally get an offer accepted, and they're like, okay, give me a second, let me figure out this deposit. You don't want that. You don't have time for that. You can work as hard as you can, as hard as you want to, and get the job done. But because they don't have the deposit, it blew all your efforts out of the window. So please make sure you qualify your tenants just like you would anybody else. Do not treat them differently. Offer acceptance tips. Here's what we all want to know. So I would offer more per month. This increases the owner cap rate, which is important because they probably bought this property at a 7% cap rate, but maybe your offer gives them 8. Be mindful though, you can't just throw out any offer you want because it's on Section 8 voucher. They still are aware of what's going on. They have an idea of what houses cost in a certain area. Also, if you manage or own a multi-unit building and are renting to Section 8, they want you to tell them what your other units are paying in rent. So if you're telling housing, this unit right here is $3,000 a month, but then they found out all 3 of your other identical units are $2,000 a month, why are we paying different? Why are you treating us differently? That sounds like discrimination. So definitely be on top of that. But if the market calls for it, if you run comps, if their voucher amount calls for enough for this area, then why not offer a little month if the tenant can afford that difference in security deposit and they can afford that difference in whatever their portion of rent is. Like
And
I said
Khalid,
before,
we get this
yes.
Khalid, we get this question all the time. Can't we just offer, the rent, right? If the market rents like $2,000 for a unit, right? To be competitive, can't we just say that the tenant's going to pay, $200 in side payments? Or as the landlord, can't we demand that?
No, you can't. They will not let you pay anything outside of the rent. While I have you, here's a question. Let's just
And that's
say,
the criminal case.
yes, let's just say the tenant and landlord are off by say $100 a month. Could the tenant conceivably say, here's $1,200, here's a non-refundable deposit? What do you,
Well,
is it gray
I
area?
would not, I would not do that, right? Because I think, as a non-refundable deposit, you run into issues with the Section 8 admin plan, and you still run into issues with side payments, right? Because
Mhm.
this whole thing is called side payments. It is illegal for landlords to demand them, and it is not okay for tenants to pay them, right? Because from the landlord side, that's a false Claims Act issue, and the U.S. Attorney's Office is very active in prosecuting those cases. You don't want to be on the defending side of that. I can tell you that from experience, having worked with the U.S. Attorney's Office on those issues. And then from the tenant side, right, you could put your customer in danger of losing their voucher entirely if they are offering side payments because, ostensibly, right, the idea is that they are only paying 30 to 40% of what their household income is. If they are able to pay a whole lot more, we had a tester recently who said, I have a voucher, I want to rent this $18,000 a month payment. One of our members saw this issue, and the tester was like, well, I'll give you a side payment. That tester could very well lose if they have a voucher, right? They could very well lose their voucher because if they have that much money to be paying toward rent each month, then, the Section 8's perspective is, well, give us your voucher back. We got a line full of folks who are ready to use it, right?
Yeah.
So make sure that you are not engaging in the side payment conversation. That said, Khalid, there is something to be said about negotiations, right? And that goes for the Section 8 program as well. If you're $100 off, right, contact, the caseworker at Section 8. See if you can get them to budge on giving you a little more in the fair market rent and increasing the voucher amount to cover the rent, because they also know how tough it is out there right now for tenants to lease up. So reach out to Section 8. If you're like really close on negotiations, reach out to them.
Definitely. I had a good point. Oh yeah. I'll move on and I'm sure it'll come back to me. So A larger security deposit, like I was saying, because it's more protection for the owner. Honestly, it has to be reasonable though. And back on the note of offering more per month, you don't want to go crazy, because I have had an offer that was a full $1,000 above my asking price. And it just freaked us all out. It freaked me out. It freaked the owner out. We was like, why? Well, this doesn't make any sense. Go somewhere else for $3,000. You could get a mansion, you know? So we just denied it because it just didn't make any sense. So you don't want to be too aggressive. There is a such thing as a too aggressive offer. It'll be like, what are you trying to hide? Letters of a recommendation, I probably had the most success with. It doesn't really matter who the letter is from. They just want to know, because again, this is a big field of what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say ignorance because it just sounds so harsh. This is a big field of
it's complicated. It's really complicated,
it's complicated,
right? Like,
yes. There's a lot to it.
yeah.
So they just don't know what they're getting into. They're freaking out. All they know is what they've heard. And what they've heard is probably from people who also don't have much of an idea of what they're doing. They're probably speaking from experiences of, well, here's how I didn't do a good job at moving someone in, and here's how it burned me. They're not going to tell the full story of what they did wrong, which is not screening. So a letter of recommendation can really show the owner, the landlord, it'll slow them down. It's like pump your brakes. Let's really look at who this person is. Their last landlord, their employer, their friends, their sister, everyone is willing to take the time to write this letter to show how great of a person they are. I feel like they're in good hands. The best one is probably going to be from a previous landlord, because that's going to say, look, the only reason I'm letting them go is because I'm selling the property. The only reason I'm letting them go is because they want something bigger. They want something, you know, it's when people move in using a Section 8 voucher, from my experience, they tend to be pretty long-term tenants. As long as they can keep up with their renewals and pass the inspections and their income verification still check out, because again, housing is going to check your bank statements every year to look for change. A letter of recommendation is probably the best way to like show the best picture of who these people are. The more, the better. No more than 2 people per room. They don't like overcrowding their house because it raises the risk of damage. For example, if it's a 2-2 and let's call it a 2-1. If it's a 2-1 and you have 7 people living in there, I don't think a 1-bathroom plumbing is built to support that much. So that many people shouldn't fit in one room. It's just a lot of emotion, a lot of in and out, a lot going on, and it's going to freak out an owner. So try to balance it out to make sure the house is an appropriate size. If I'm not mistaken, the housing vouchers also account for this, and they ask, how many people are in your family? Well, here's how much of a bedrooms you need, and here's how much we'll give you. It's all hand in hand. Include a background credit and income check, because if you're taking on this tenant, just like any other tenant or client, you should pre-qualify them and you should already have this information. The board, we have a connection with Rent Spree. So Rent Spree will provide all of this information for you. Definitely check out Rent Spree. I have a promo code if you ask me for it. Well-written and presented offer package. The worst thing an agent can do is send a cheap or poorly presented offer. And what's the cheapest and worst presented offer you could do? And that is to call me or any listing agent and say, hey, so I have this tenant using Section 8, and I just want to know if you take them. That's horrible. That's horrible. I'm probably gonna brush you off. I'll just say, look, you can show it, you can apply, and I'll present it. Show knowledge and understanding of the process. What this does is it just makes everyone more comfortable. Everyone's at your listing appointment, when you're signing this rental lease. Oh, this brings me to another good point. Having a knowledge of Section 8 and how Section 8 works will drastically increase the amount of rental listings you can take. I have the YouTube video on Section 8, and I constantly get calls from leads, from clients, from sellers, from owners, from investors that want to know more. So just showing that you understand the process, just showing that you took this class. I would take a screenshot of you being on this class and just show your social media, I'm learning Section 8, just so people can say, list my house. I want someone who knows what they're doing. So showing an understanding on the process will definitely just make everyone more comfortable and more acceptable to do what you're saying to do. They will listen to you. If I feel like you don't know what you're doing, I'm not listening to you. So it's the same thing here. Verify if property has associations with a minimum income or credit score. This is a big point. That's why I wrote it twice. Compare tenant's education at blah, blah, blah. We touched on that. Let's go. Y'all got showings. Okay, inspection. Let's get through the inspection process, because this is another thing that freaks people out, and let's calm them down. So the checklist, it can be found online, and that makes this kind of like an open book test. So if you go on, it's important to note that each housing authority is different. There is not one Section 8 for all of Florida. There's going to be the Fort Lauderdale Housing Authority, the Miami-Dade Housing Authority, the Dania Beach Housing Authority. They're all different. And if you go on whatever housing authority is applicable to you or applying for your property, on their website, there should be a inspection checklist where they will tell you exactly what they're coming to look at. I'll tell you a few clues of what I know they're going to look at because I failed for these reasons before. If you have a cracked tile, they're going to fail because they're thinking a kid's going to run, they're going to cut their foot, dangerous. If you have a pool and there's no safety net or covering, dangerous. A child they're expecting a family to move in here or at least children somewhere. So anything that's a threat to a child, if you have an outlet that doesn't have a cover on it, they can touch it, they can get electrocuted, you're going to fail. If you have a stove or anything that's not working, you're going to fail. So just look through the checklist, show your owner the checklist, tell your owner, look, I have a checklist. That's going to make them way more comfortable. And then go through the property beforehand, look around, compare it to the checklist, and do like a pre-inspection. So you can say, oh, there's a missing outlet right here. Let's put it in. Oh, this stove doesn't work. Can we fix it? Can we replace it? There are companies that repair appliances, so don't think you have to buy a whole new stove if it's just like one burner that's not working. They're not going to come in and do like a full I'm not going to name drop a company. I'm not going to name a company. They're not going to
Don't do it.
I'm not going to do it. They're not going to do a full-on inspection like if you were purchasing a house, which takes an hour or two. They're going to be in and out because they have probably 20 other inspections that day. So they're coming in with a little checklist. They're going to go, okay, good, fix that, good. And they'll tell you, okay, you need to do this, this, and this, and call me back. Once you failed, you call them back and they will re-inspect. Someone must be present to let the inspector in. They will not use a lockbox. They do not care. You have to see them do the inspection because they don't want the liability of you saying, no, that was working. It must have broke when you were there. And they're not gonna give you an exact time. It's gonna be like getting like a refrigerator delivery. They're gonna say, I'll be there between 7 a.m. and 11 a.m. I'll be there between 5 and 7. Like you have to be there the whole window because you don't know when they're actually gonna show up. A situation I had was a property the next county over. The inspection was between 7 a.m. and 12 noon. And I thought I was smart. I said, I'm not sitting there all day. I want to go a little late. On the highway at like 6:58, he calls and says, hey, I'm here. Can you let me in? I'm like, I'm sorry. So I had to reschedule. It took a week to get him back out. When he came back out, the power was out the whole time. So we just turned on the AC and it was hot. I failed for that. I felt because, so it's a question, if the power has been off, please turn it on like a day or two beforehand and cool the AC off. Make sure everything is working. The last thing you need is to get there. The inspector gets there and nothing's working when you could have found that out yesterday.
And be nice to your inspectors. Be
nice to your inspector. Oh my gosh. They will be your friends. Yes, I have had inspectors call me and text me personally and say, hey, I just want to let you know I'm coming. Hey, when do you want me to come back? Like they'll work with you. They want to help people move in. Their job is not to keep people out in the streets. Yes, okay. The property must be move-in ready. It has to be clean and no furniture. Everything can work. Everything can be flawless. It can have all the outlet covers and pool covers in the world. But if they get there and it's dirty and there's like a ripped up couch over there, they're going to fail you for that. Because they're under the impression that once we pass this inspection, they're probably going to be moving in within the next couple of days. So cleanliness and emptiness, and it just has to be move-in ready, fully move-in ready. You have to be able to give them the keys and say, come on in. Like I was saying before, all appliances listed must be working. The example of the stove, it has to work. Pools must have coverings or safety gate. I said that. And failed or missed inspections must be rescheduled days away. I said that. Let's move on. That's it. I did everything. This is my website, theinvestorpropertygurus.com. Follow me on Instagram. I am Khalid Explains It All because I explain things very well. And follow my brokerage, The Investor Property Gurus. I appreciate you. Let's open the floor for questions. Evian, did you have something to say, Evian?
No, I think what we'll do then is wrap it up now. I want to give a huge thank you to Khalid for sharing his wealth of knowledge. You are clearly very experienced. You have such practical knowledge to offer and share with the rest of our membership, and we so appreciate it. And thank you to Kevin for rolling with us and getting this set up. I know it's no easy feat to set up a 4-week series of a webinar for anything. We really appreciate it. And for all of you who are with us today, remember, the slides. We will be emailing you the slides. We will be posting the video online. And if you have any questions, Khalid, I hope I'm not stepping out of line by telling everybody they can reach out to you and ask you for advice on Section 8 issues. And if you have any questions or seeing any systemic issues about the problem, are you seeing any systemic problems with Section 8 programs or issues that you keep seeing over and over again in the market, whether it's Section 8 or otherwise, our advocacy team and our Miami Realtors RPAC, we want to hear from you because this is what we do. This is part of what we do for our members. So make sure you are doing that. And we will go ahead and end it here. Thank you again for joining us.
Give up on my way home, yeah. Wouldn't it be crazy? But you still amaze me. Wouldn't it be crazy? But you still amaze me. Wouldn't it be crazy? But you still amaze me. Wouldn't it be crazy? But you still amaze me. Give up on my way home, yeah. Give up on my way home, yeah. Wouldn't it be crazy? But you still amaze me. Wouldn't it be crazy? But you still amaze me. Wouldn't it be crazy? But you still amaze me. Wouldn't it be crazy? But you still amaze me.